Good morning, everyone. It's good to see you. My name is Curtis Smith, and welcome to Second Unitarian Church. I am a member of the Board of Trustees, and my pronouns are him, his, and her. He, him, his. Sorry, it's Sunday morning. So today we are in person at the Admiral at the Lake, the 2U Sanctuary, and continue to meet virtually using Zoom. We ask everyone's indulgence for the complications of a three-part service. We're glad you are here, whichever way you are attending. If you're in the sanctuary and would benefit from hearing assistance, please see our tech team in the back. We are currently seeing both a national and global surge in COVID numbers. We strongly encourage people to wear masks during the service. This prevents transmission of the virus and helps center the needs of those most vulnerable. We are especially welcome newcomers and visitors today. Finding a new community and making new connections can be challenging. Please know that we're excited you are here and look forward to getting to know you. If you are new to us today, please note that in the Zoom chat and mention it in conversations after the service. If you would like, there are blue mugs you can use to signal to others that you would like them to say hello. We also always need people in the kitchen after coffee hour, and that's a great place to see old friends and make new ones. Our worship today is led by Reverend Jason Lydon, along with David Hakel as worship associate. Music is provided by Thais Vasilowski, Audrey Martin, and Sylvia Bondurant. Our time together requires a large group of people who make possible the worship, the music, and the techno production. They are listed in the order of service, and we thank them for their ongoing service to the congregation. I do have a few announcements to make, but I would like to invite Kate Frulobe and Barb Haley to give an announcement about the cookie sale.
There's a paper announcement in your order of service about the 2U cookie sale, which is happening next Sunday. This is an annual 2U tradition. It coincides always with Music Sunday, so you can come hear amazing music that hopefully puts you in the mood to buy and eat cookies. And we always have an amazing selection, and that's where all of you come in because we do need volunteers to bake and some volunteers to help with setup and checkout. So there's a QR code here. There's a old-fashioned pen and paper sign-up sheet on the welcoming table, and you can contact Kate and I if you have any questions.
Yes, and obviously my elfin friend is so busy cooking that she forgot to wear her shirt today. So I hope you all will get busy also. We'll see you next week.
See you next week.
Thank you, Barb and Kate. Another announcement I have, please note that Monday, December 11th at 6 p.m., we are going to write holiday cards to Unitarian Universalists who are incarcerated in Illinois prisons. We will gather at the Admiral. This is a great way to send notes of care to those who are particularly lonely during this holiday season. And now I welcome David Hakel to lead us in the call to worship.
We are a Unitarian Universalist congregation, a community of children, youth, and adults, a people of many beliefs and traditions, bound not by the specific list of things we believe, but by the values we share. Whether you are joining us for the first time or for the 1,000th time, you are welcome here. Whether you believe in God some of the time, all of the time, or none of the time, you are welcome here. Whatever your race, whomever you love, whichever way you move in the world, however much money is in your pocket, you are welcome here. I invite you now, as you are ready, to take a breath in and out. As the music begins, let us enter into our service together.
still and small, deep inside all, I hear you call, singing. In storm and rain, sorrow and pain, still will remain, singing. Calming my fears, quenching my tears, through all the years, singing. Voice still and small, deep inside all, I hear you call, singing. In storm and rain, sorrow and pain, still will remain, singing. Calming my fears, quenching my tears, through all the years, singing.
Thank you. Always so good to hear you. Before I share our chalice lighting words this morning, I wanted to share some news with you. That longtime member of our church, Dick Scheiberly, at the age of 90, passed away last week. We honor his life, and there will be an opportunity to gather together in January to have a dinner, to tell stories and celebrate the many ways that Dick contributed to this community and to others. And so we hold him in our hearts as he moves on to the great wonder of whatever is next. In just a moment, Ryan, here in the sanctuary, and Harris at the Admiral, will light our chalices, the symbol of our faith. And we light our chalices this morning with these words from Taina Marquez. It is a wonder and mystery that our paths have crossed. That in the immensity of time and the vastness of space, we coincide here. I am in awe at the ways in which our lives intersect and intertwine, at the beauty we create when we gather. May our coming together make us more compassionate, more just, more caring, and more loving. May our hearts and minds be open to this offering, because I am glad you are here. Let us worship. Let us marvel at the miracle of being here right now and the mystery that brought us together. Right.
Please rise in body or in spirit and join me in singing our opening hymn, number 1008 in the Teal hymnal. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are
unmuted. Please remain standing. And join me in affirming the covenant. The words are on your screen. We covenant to build community that challenges us to grow and empowers us to honor the truth within ourselves. We'll be generous with our gifts and honest in our communication, holding faithful to a love that embraces both diversity and conflict. Called by our living tradition, we will nurture spirituality within a vision of the eternal, living out our inner convictions through struggles for justice and acts of compassion.
Please continue to stand and join me in singing number 123, Spirit of Life, in the Gray Hymnal. Spirit of life, come unto me, sing in my heart all the stirrings of compassion, blow in the wind, rise in the sea, move in the hand, giving life the shape of justice. Roots hold me close, wings set me free. Spirits of life, come to me, come to me.
I want to invite those who are young in age or young at heart and join me on the chancel. Good morning.
I just did the gritty.
Well, it's so nice to see you this morning.
have that book.
You think you have this book?
I already finished that book 10 times.
Finished this book 10 times? Wow. Well, forget it. We're just not going to do this then. No.
We have that book.
You have this book
Me
too? You have this book too? Oh my gosh. I'm so excited that we're going to get to read it together. And if you know some of the words, feel free to say them with me.
A is for activists.
A is for activist, advocate, abolitionist, ally, actively answering a call to action. Are you an activist? Wow, you really do know all these words. B is for banner, bobbing in the sky, billowing in the breeze, because you're not shy. C is for co-op, cooperating cultures, creating counter to corporate values. Vultures, excuse me. Oh, and cats. I don't know, do you know that there are cats on every page of this book?
What? Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I see
Can you,
it.
yes, you see some of the cats?
Cat, and go
Oh, you want to go backwards?
Cat.
There's a cat. D, little d, democracy.
Cat.
More than voting, you'll agree. Sorry, you could probably read this better than I can. It's hard for me to see. Dictators detest it. Donkeys don't get it. But you and me, we demand equality. Equal rights, black, brown, or white, clean and healthy is a right. Every place we live and play, environmental justice is the way. F is for feminist, for fairness in our pay, for freedom to flourish. You got that cat. And choose our own way. G is for grassroots, sprouting from below, sharing nutrients and the water's flow. Below the surface, we're all connected. Stronger together, we grow. H is for healthy food, a human right. Honeydew, Jamaica, Nature's Delight, hummus, hot dogs, and Havarti cheese. Hot dogs? Yes, healthy hot dogs, please. And pizza. Yum.
Vegetarian pizza and hot dogs.
Indigenous and immigrant, together we stand tall. Our histories are relevant. An injury to one is an injury to all. You found more cats. Can you find the cat in here?
I found the cat here. Oh, this is a crow.
It is. J is for justice. Yay for justice. Jia Jing Jiang. Justice for the janitors. Justicia for all. Kings are fine for story time. Knights are fun to play. But when we make decisions, we will choose the people's way. LGBTQ, love who you choose, 'cause love is true. Liberate your notions of limited emotion. Celebrate with pride our links to devotion. Megaphones, marching, movimiento, music, hip, hip, hooray, it must be May Day. N is for no, 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 no. Yes to what we want, no to what must go. No, no, no.
Wait, why does this say no justice, no peace?
Well, no justice, no peace. That's one of the chants people say. Open minds operate best. Critical thinking over tests. Wisdom can't be memorized. Educate, agitate, organize.
Oh, cat.
Peace march. Protest. Pow, power to the people. Yeah.
I found the crow.
Yes. Q is for question, questioning coercion, querying qualities, counter false assertions. Radical Reds on the headline said, ruinous rioters, the rumors spread, rabble-rousing riffraff. Really? Yeah, can you see? I wonder, adults, if you can see in this picture, too, there are lots of visionary leaders in this picture, which is pretty neat. And a cat.
And a cat.
S is for sun, soul, solar, superstar, stellar, power, fuels all little, not just flowers, energized home, cars, and showers. Silly, selfish scoundrels sucking on dinosaur sludge. Boo hiss. T is for trans, for trains, tiaras, tulips, tractors, and tigers too. Trust in the true.
Oh, here it is.
The he, she, they, that is you. U is for weekends. U is for workers' rights. Wait a minute. That's not U. That's W. U is for union. Union, yes. V is for Vox. What did you say? Fox? No, I said Vox. Did you just say box? No, Vox. Rocks, blocks, socks, Vox. Vox of the people, voice of the populi. Sure. Better go see the letter D. Wondrous worlds, wondrous we. We cannot be whole, we cannot be free unless we delight in diversity. X is for Malcolm, as in Malcolm X. History's lessons can be complex. Remember Parks, remember King, remember Malcolm, and let freedom ring. Y is for you and youth. Your planet, your right, your future, your truth. Y is for yes, 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 yes. Z is for Zapatista, of course.
What's that, Batista?
Zapatistas are a Mexican group of folks on the southern part of Mexico. Yes.
I've been to Mexico.
You've been to Mexico? Me too.
Also for
Well, it's also for Zella. Z is for Zella. Yes.
Yeah.
All right. Well, off to classes you go, and please let us sing our children as they go. Go now in peace. Go now in peace. The spirit of love surrounds you everywhere, everywhere you may go. So each year, we, as this church, make a commitment, a pledge to support the ministries of our church. In addition to this commitment that we make each year, we also take a collection every Sunday so that we can share with those who are doing justice work well beyond our walls. In just a moment, you can find a phone number on the screen, and you can find one in your order of service that you can make your contribution. December is a little bit different than other months, though. December, we take a collection so that we can support the Minister's Discretionary Fund. And this is a resource that you all create that makes it so that I can support people in our community who are in need of financial resources. I asked a couple of the folks who are supporting if I can share their stories this month. And one of the people is someone who lives in Rogers Park and has for a long time. He's a veteran and struggles to get access to work. He's been trying and trying and trying and just can't get a job. And so he comes to me on a pretty regular basis to ask for support for travel so that he can take the train from place to place to place, so that he can do the work that he needs to do to access support services, to access resources that will make it so that he can take care of himself. And also, every now and then, I'm able to help out with a little bit of his back rent. And so he is doing all that he can do to survive. And you make it possible for me to make his life more possible. And so I am so grateful that we have this fund. It is a resource that's also available to you, that if you notice that you're on hard times, that you can't make ends meet, that you need some extra support, you can always reach out to me. And this resource is confidential. I would never share someone's story without their permission. This is a resource that we make available to anybody who needs it. And so we collect money every year, and every year I get to spend it. And I'm so glad that you let me do that. And so I ask, and you'll hear this again in a moment, but I ask that you give as generously as you can. Dave.
Now I invite you to join me in reading our offertory words. The words are printed in your order of service and are on your screen. This church is the community of ourselves. Its energy and resources are our energy and resources, as well as what we share. As we contribute to the life of this community, we affirm it and enable its participation in the larger world around us. The offering will now be generously given and gratefully received.
You, wherever it is that you are here in the sanctuary, gathered at the Admiral, maybe joining from home or on a walk, I invite you to join me in the spirit of prayer or meditation. Let's start by breathing together. Try relaxing the muscles in your shoulders. Release the tension in your neck. Unclench your beautiful jaw and just breathe into this space, this time. We begin in thanks. Thankful for the breath in our lungs, the beauty of our earth, and the strength of this, our beloved community. We hold in our hearts those who care for family in ill health, those who live with grief, or chronic pain, those struggling with addiction or illness, seen and unseen, we are with you. For parents and teachers and all those whose primary spiritual practice is caring for children, we are with you. We pray for our neighbors in prison, for those who are struggling to stay afloat in the midst of poverty, we are with you. We pray for all those living in harm's way. Pray for our planet and commit to work that will lead us away from the harms of climate chaos. As war just continues to rage, we pray that wisdom, compassion, and empathy guide the leaders of our world. May they and we be instruments of a just and lasting peace. Our lives are truly blessed by those who knowingly, with curiosity and courage, face their final days. Now into this, our shared silence across space, I invite you to speak aloud the name of anyone you wish to lift up into the loving support of this community. With our deepest compassion, let us hold in our hearts those named and unnamed, those remembered and those forgotten. Let it be so. Amen, and blessed be. During our ritual of lighting candles for joys and concerns, we want to continue to maintain our safety with one another. In the 2U sanctuary, I'll invite you forward in just a moment. And as you end your time of candle lighting and reflection, I invite you to use the hand sanitizer that's available. For those of us at the Admiral, I invite you to come forward and take a pebble from one bowl, hold it tightly, putting your energy into the stone, and then knowing your joys and sorrows to be shared by this community, let it go lightly into the other bowl. And for those of us on Zoom, please join by sharing your joys and concerns in our chat window. I will light a candle here to represent your celebrations and sorrows. We hold all of these, our shared joys, celebrations, concerns, and sorrows close to our hearts. Dave, would you share our first reading, please?
Our first reading this morning is a blessing offered upon us all upon the weekend of World AIDS Day. These words are from Reverend Maureen Coloren. It has been a long struggle, and our work is far from over. As we go forth, may we be empowered by the spirit of hope and healing, whose one name is God and whose other name is love. May the blessings of love be upon us and within us. May love's truths be upon our vision. May love's wisdom dwell within our hearts. May love's persistence inspire our lives. May love's gentleness give comfort to our bodies. May love's gratitude accompany our sleep. May love's healing be a balm for our brokenness. May love's may love's serenity give peace to our weary soul. May love's confidence energize our minds. May love's challenge keep us faithful. Faithful in our struggle, faithful in our conviction that love and justice and hope will ultimately prevail.
Now, our second reading this morning is a video, and it is not going to be often that we watch a news clip as part of a worship service, but as we reflect today on the AIDS Coalition to Unleash Power, ACT UP, I wanted to make sure you got a little summary of their work from visionaries and leaders in that movement.
This beautiful day started with trouble in Lower Manhattan. More than 100 people were arrested during a protest. Demonstrators were demanding more money in the war against AIDS.
In the spring of 1987, an upstart activist group started making noise and changes to help people with HIV/AIDS.
Well, ACT UP was the AIDS Coalition to Unleash Power. It was a direct action political activist group that started in March 1987. My name is Sarah Schulman, and I'm the author of Let the Record Show, a political history of ACT UP New York, 1987 to 1993.
Schulman, a journalist and former ACT UP member, says the group accomplished a lot in a short period of time at the height of the AIDS crisis.
In 6 years, ACT UP achieved incredible victories for people with AIDS. Some of the most outstanding wins were that ACT UP forced pharmaceutical companies and the government to change the way they researched medications for AIDS. ACT UP forced the Food and Drug Administration to make experimental drugs available to people who were sick, even if they had not been approved. ACT UP made needle exchange legal in New York City, which meant that people who were using needles for intravenous drug use could exchange them for clean needles so that they could avoid transmitting HIV through blood contact. ACT UP stopped the Catholic Church when they tried to interfere with condom distribution in the public schools. ACT UP ran a 4-year campaign to make sure that women with AIDS could get benefits and get access to experimental drugs. And really, ACT UP transformed how queer people and people with AIDS felt about themselves and how we were represented in the mainstream media.
Healthcare is the right! Healthcare is the right!
ACT UP's public protests could make the group difficult to ignore.
So ACT UP was a very bold and daring organization because people were fighting for their lives. So at one point, the Catholic Church in New York City was fighting public schools who wanted to make condoms available to students to save their lives. And ACT UP thought, you know, this is a state of emergency. We can't just sit back and let the church do this, and it could cause people's deaths. So they made the very bold move of, in December 1989, disrupting Mass at St. Patrick's Cathedral, demanding that the church stop hurting people, not only queer people, but anyone who was trying to protect themselves from HIV.
Shulman says the controversial protest at St. Patrick's marked a shift in the way the LGBTQ community stood up for itself.
It was considered a real changing moment in gay politics and in queer power, because it was really the first time that people with AIDS stood up to such a fixed, large source of power in New York City as the Catholic Church.
Treatment for HIV/AIDS has improved dramatically since the 90s. But because HIV/AIDS still exists, ACT UP still exists to advocate for healthcare reform and research, as well as for the rights of people with HIV/AIDS. And the early years of ACT UP may serve as a template to other activist groups.
I mean, I think the most important takeaway is to be focused on concrete goals, to educate yourself so that you are the expert, to design the solution that's reasonable, winnable, and doable, to present it to the powers that be, and if they refuse, to do creative, nonviolent civil disobedience so that you can communicate to the public through the media and pressure institutions to change.
This is Inside Edition Digital.
minutes, 525,000 moments so dear, 525,600 minutes. How do you measure a year? In daylights, in sunsets, in midnights, in cups of coffee, in inches, in miles, in laughter, in strife, in 525,600 minutes. How do you measure a year in the life? How about love? How about love? How about love? Measuring love. Seasons of love. Seasons of love. 525,600 minutes, 525,000 journeys to plan, 525,600 minutes. How do you measure the life of a woman or a man? In truths that she learned, or in times that he cried, in bridges he burned, or the way that she died. Celebrate, remember a year in the life of friends. Oh, you got to remember the love. You know that love is a gift from up above. Share love, give love, spread love. Measure your life in love. Ooh, ooh, Thank you.
Thank you, Sophia. I come from a generation of people where rent was the introduction to HIV in so many ways. We're listening to Jonathan Larson's musical shaped my understanding of this virus that took so many lives. I want you to take a moment and imagine or remember 1987. Some of you, that might not be super difficult. For others of us, I was just 4 years old at the time. And yet the history of that moment, it's really shaped my life forever. In 1987, tens of thousands of predominantly gay men had died of AIDS. They were dealing with family rejection, medical stigma, a complete lack of treatment, harassment from mainstream religion, and overwhelming indifference from our government. Those who were dying and many who loved them refused to allow the demonization, stigma, and indifference be the only defining aspect of who they were. And so one of the key organizations that played a role in transforming the way AIDS was addressed in our culture was ACT UP, the AIDS Coalition to Unleash Power. Refusing to die quietly, refusing to allow beloveds to die without protest, these activists used their collective power to demand change and force government to take action, force pharmaceuticals to take action, and force the Catholic Church to silence their life-denying message. The story of how ACT UP was founded is contested, like many origin stories of many organizations and institutions. The most common story that gets lifted up is that an activist and organizer in New York City by the name of Larry Kramer gave a speech at the recently created Gay Center on March 10th, 1987. In this speech, he asked half of the attendees there to stand up. And then he said, "Within 4 years, you will all be dead." In response to this speech, ACT UP was created 2 days later. People did not want to die. People were refusing to die. Lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender people who were at the greatest risk of AIDS death were determined to survive. A direct action organization became the tool many people embraced to force change. Now, I wish I could take time to go through every action members of ACT UP organized, but that's not realistic for our time this morning. We have much to cover about the impact that AIDS has had on our lives. Instead, I want to lift up a few actions that were listed by Michael Spector in his article, How ACT UP Changed America. He highlights the following actions. They wrapped the home of North Carolina Senator Jesse Helms' house in a giant yellow condom. Amazing. If you haven't seen the pictures of this, I strongly encourage you to go online and look. They, as was mentioned in the video we saw, they invaded St. Patrick's Cathedral during Mass. They laid siege to the Food and Drug Administration, chanting, "Hey, hey, FDA, how many people have you killed today?" One of the actions that I find most profound is they dumped the ashes of their comrades who had died of AIDS on the White House lawn during Reagan's administration. Each of these actions were deeply controversial. That is how they operated. Each of these actions created a media spectacle. Each of these actions were organized by people who were desperate to survive. And there was little to fear because death was imminent. What might you do if death felt imminent? What might you do if a community you were part of was facing government indifference and spiritual violence? I want to take a moment to reflect particularly on the action at St. Patrick's Cathedral, because we are gathered in a church space right now. And I find it hard to imagine what it would be like to have a group come in and interrupt our worship service. Churches are sacred spaces where people come for solace and care. Religious communities are vital for people to take care of themselves, and yet churches also have power and impact social policies. Churches can be complicit in violence and perpetuate generations of trauma. I imagine some of you have felt that and find refuge here. ACT UP members had many times protested outside this church, but on December 10th, 1989, they escalated their tactics. This time, in addition to the 7,000 protesters outside the cathedral, hundreds of people peacefully entered the church, some disrupting Cardinal O'Connor's sermon. Their goal was to highlight the church's complicity in AIDS deaths. The church was actively opposing distribution of condoms in school and also preventing the advent of a new program in New York that would have taught queer history in their classes. The action of disruption was intended to challenge the church and push for a transformed New York City. People within ACT UP were quite divided about the effectiveness of this action. ACT UP, though, was not a top-down organization, and any affinity group, could go about planning and executing their own actions. They needed the support of the weekly Monday meeting attendees, and there is profound documentation of their process at the ACT UP oral history website. There's even video that they took of meetings leading up to the action where they're debating and discussing and trying and wondering and fighting. And in one of the videos, you can see members of WHAM, great name, the Women's Health and Action Mobilization, describing the importance of making connections between the Cardinals' response to AIDS and the response to people trying to access abortions. One of the powerful parts of ACT UP was their ability to draw connections between struggles. I wonder if you've seen images of this action that happened at the church. There was briefly one here. I wonder if you can imagine what it's like to witness members of ACT UP staging a die-in right at church. They chanted over and over again, "Stop killing us. Stop killing us." Was their action justified? What actions are justified when people are dying? What disruption of normal daily affairs is legitimate when people are being ignored time and time again? And then how does this translate from the AIDS activism of the 80s and 90s to the activism of today? There's a brand new book that you just heard about that's based on the interviews of over 100 participants in the New York City's ACT UP chapter that's written by Sarah Schulman. It is very long. I spent about 25 hours listening to it this summer as I drove around the East Coast. Maybe those of you who like long books, that's not a big deal, but it was a big stretch for me because my brain is no longer as good at remembering things as it once was, and I hear a rumor that that doesn't get better. Schulman focused especially on the role of women and people of color within ACT UP. While much of the ACT UP story that gets told is from the perspective of white gay men, they were certainly not the only participants in ACT UP organizing efforts. One of the stories that really stuck out to me was the role of the organizing in Puerto Rico. There were Puerto Ricans in New York City who wanted to build relationships with HIV-positive people on the island of Puerto Rico, and those activists there who were not necessarily positive, but affected by the virus. The responsibility of the folks in New York was to be sure they were not participating in colonial activism, not bringing their US national organizing framework and kind of thrusting it upon Puerto Rican activists. Rather than dictate appropriate organizing, they collaborated and built authentic relationships rooted in trust. It is often said that organizing, and I would say church life, can only move at the speed of trust. The more we trust one another, the greater risks we can take with one another. The more we trust one another, the more powerful our actions for justice will be. The more we trust one another, the greater we can love one another. This is something that we've seen in ACT UP, and it's something that we can see in organizing and church life today. Another part of Schulman's book that stuck out to me was the acknowledgement that most people affected by HIV did not get involved in activism. Most people who were positive were not taking part in civil disobedience. Most people who were at greatest risk for HIV were not taking to the streets. In a, I think, less than optimistic framing, Schulman writes, most people, after all, do not act to create change. And she goes on to offer some explanation, and I hope this feels gentle. Then there were specific obstacles, she observes. There were many thousands of people who died in the closet rather than come to ACT UP. There were literally thousands, if not millions, of people who wanted AIDS to end, who never could imagine themselves in a state of overt physical and public opposition to the police, the mayor, the president, the New York Times, science, government, art museums, and pharmaceutical companies. The thought of being handcuffed and arrested on television publicly associated with AIDS, drugs, sex, disrupted their image of their futures which were never going to happen. But in fantasy, it depended on being appropriate. In order to get out of hell, she continues, you have to be in hell. So pretending it's all fine and will be fine, that won't get you out. I don't think this is necessarily Sarah Schulman calling people out, but rather acknowledging the way that change happens. When we look at social movements throughout history, we know that most people don't participate. Instead, it's a smaller group, a dedicated group, a risk-taking group that is profoundly engaged in the necessary work to push for and demand change. And I'm not so sure that's wrong. We get to benefit from each other's actions. We get to be moved and transformed by the ways other people work and shape the world. So this is a lot to hold. This is a history, and yet AIDS is not over. While new infections are on the decline, the story of inequity is still profound. I want to share some information with you from the CDC. Gay and bisexual men continue to account for 2/3 of new HIV infections. And disparities in HIV remain severe among racial groups. Black people face rates of infection that are 8 times as high as white people. Latinx people face rates that are almost 4 times as high as white folk. Geographically, the South is so disproportionately affected. The region accounts for more than half of new HIV infections, yet only represent 35% of the US population. Think about why that might be. This inequity is about resource distribution. This inequity is about racism and conservatism. The same political parties and churches who are denying condom access in the 80s and 90s continue to deny access to life-saving treatments and prevention today. Needle exchange, which we know saves lives, continues to be illegal almost everywhere in our country. Condom distribution continues to be rare in Southern schools. These are life-denying practices, and they are antithetical to our Unitarian Universalist values. Our faith calls upon us to continue acting up and learning from the history of AIDS activists and supporting the present-day organizers who are fighting to save lives. HIV is different today than it was 40 years ago. There is incredibly effective treatment, but if one doesn't have health care, what good is treatment going to be? I wonder if you know that HIV-positive people on treatment can have the virus become undetectable in their system, and they're unable to transmit HIV to a partner. Public health advocates call this U equals U, undetectable equals untransmittable. I also wonder if you've ever heard of PrEP, pre-exposure prophylaxis. This is a daily medication that those at risk of HIV can take to hugely reduce the risk of transmission. It's just as effective as condoms. Only last year, a judge in Texas ruled that religious institutions can refuse to cover PrEP based on their religious beliefs. The church is continuing to deny life, particularly when it comes to queer and transgender communities. But what of our church? What of Unitarian Universalism? My friend and colleague, the Reverend Sean Neil Barron, after this ruling in Texas, wrote a litany about PrEP. A litany to celebrate our faith and what we're called to do. I want to share a piece of it with you. Blessed are all who take PrEP, for your body is your own, and you are protecting it. Blessed are all for whom sex is fraught, who fear HIV, for with PrEP you might feel intimate connection with less fear. Blessed are all doctors who prescribe PrEP, pharmacists who dispense it, community health workers who recommend it, friends who pass the word along, for you are the protectors of a generation of beloved people. Blessed are you who fight for access, for your persistence shall bring about more life. Blessed are all people who are HIV positive, for you shall know no shame, no stigma in God's eyes. Blessed are all who carry trauma from the HIV epidemic, who know what it is to be abandoned, for you are accompanied by a persistent God, by love, who will never leave you. And now I know the language of God doesn't work for all of us, and I hope you can translate it for yourself into infinite love, sacred earth, or beloved universe, and hear this litany of love for those of us on PrEP, and celebrate the beauty of transformative healthcare. This is necessary for us to do. We have the capacity to act up, beloveds. We can learn from the past and create a new future. We have the wisdom to create a theology that celebrates human sexuality, that teaches harm reduction, that honors our far too young ancestors, and that refuses to participate in stigma. This is our religion. When we talk about HIV, we're talking about sex, we're talking about drug use, and we're talking about real people's lives. And Unitarian Universalism is an embodied religion. It is our responsibility to remember that AIDS is not over, that universal health care is essential, and that with collective action comes collective healing, and in the face of mass death, we cannot be silent. Because as our ACT UP poster defiantly proclaims, silence equals death. And we will not be silent, not then and not now. Let it be so, and amen. Sophia.
And join me in singing We Laugh, We Cry. Yeah, you have it. We laugh, we cry, we live, we die, we dance, we sing our song. We need to feel there's something here to which we can belong. We need to feel the freedom just to have some time alone. But most of all, we need close friends we can call our very own. And we believe in love and in the strength of love. And we have found a need to be together. We have our hearts to give, we have our thoughts to receive, and we believe that sharing is an answer. Our lives are full of wonder and our time is very brief. The death of one among us fills us all with pain and grief. But as we live, so shall we die. And when our lives are done, the memories we shared with friends, they will linger on, and we believe in life and in the strength of love, and we have found a place to be together. We have the right to grow. We have a gift to believe that peace within our living is an answer.
I invite you to rest your hands upon your hearts or clasp hands with those you are sharing your life with during these pandemic times. We are acting up, beloveds. Time and time again, we are raising our voices, lifting our hearts, and embracing the possibility of a more equitable future. And so in the words of those who came before us, act up, fight back, fight AIDS. Go in peace, beloveds.